Thank you very much for coming, and I'm very pleased to be here with you all. I have been here before several times regarding this idea and this project, and of course I would not take long to introduce UNIDO, but I believe Terry has made a summary of what UNIDO is doing, and Dr. Hashim has successfully drived this process. But to go on practical matters, I believe that the industry is the center of all solutions that we supposed to look at when we look at preserving the environment and protecting health. And the last conference, COP21 in Paris, has given the legitimacy for that solution to be an industrial solution. But UNIDO for a long time has been working on many low-hanging fruits in industry, which means that is cleaner production, resources management, looking into energy efficiency in industry. And the reason that UNIDO has taken for a long time this approach is that that is linked to savings. Savings in both resources, but also financial savings. So we have targeted the bills the industry pays as a factor that is coming inherently in the feasibility study of the facility itself. So we take operating costs as a cost that we should pay. Now that is not true all the time. Maybe it's a cost that we start with, but not necessarily to continue paying it. Now, UNIDO has a policy on industrialization, as the agency is being mandated for that. But the actions on the ground also starts with policy. So policy in institutions, and then we come to sectors. And in terms of policy, which is the most difficult part of it and time consuming, UNIDO approach and strategy is to work on pilots. So policy implementation goes either way. So it's either by enforcing law and regulations or by giving examples, which means projects, activities, programs, so that the community would be convinced. That is a feedback to the industry. Now, one of these elements of this feedback is how to reduce the cost for the industry. UNIDO has done a lot of work in waste management, and that's several types of waste. Recently, of course, with the research that has been made across the sector of chemicals, it's the toxic chemicals, research on toxic chemicals. What is the effect of toxic chemicals on health and environment? And that's a very convincing argument where UNIDO has concluded is that as long as an environment matter not really affecting health, it will not trigger the attention of industry, neither the financing institutions. And with this, UNIDO has followed a pathway for implementation through the global environment facilities, with the support of global environment facilities, but through global environmental agreements. And the reason being that these agreements are normally signed and ratified by the countries, being it depending on the political structure, being it parliamentarian structure or presidential structure or prime minister structure and so on. So UNID went on starting implementing the conventions that have been signed and ratified by countries, but based on toxic chemicals. Now, if we take that, you can go right from the normal waste to medical waste. And of course, in between, all kinds of waste, commercial waste, industrial waste, and residential waste. So many facilities have been established, designed, of course, but implemented and established around the world. But as I said, we were following the health impact of these type of waste. And I recall that the first country where we had done this kind of work was China. And if you remember, maybe 10 years ago, there was a SARS breakout in China, which was concluded to be a result of mixing the waste, medical waste, with residential waste. And in Beijing itself, there are around 10,000 private clinics, which they dumped in their waste into the normal municipal waste, and that has made that breakout. But if you say today, where are we from that incident that happened 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago? Now we see a pattern of viral outbreaks around the world that's affecting the economy. So the first step countries do is to ban and stop traveling to these countries. And that has been done in China from a treatment point of view. But we are working on that in India today from a preventive point of view. What about renewable energies? We do mixes of renewable energies, waste to energy, particularly biogas energy. And recently we are working actually now on electric cars in South Africa. And it's the first, we are building now a first electrical filling station in South Africa as a basis for the infrastructure needed for electric cars. But we are also working with car dealers and car manufacturers. There are around 7 to 8 of them, starting with Toyota, BMW, Mercedes. All cars in South Africa are locally manufactured. They don't normally import cars. So we work with them on the energy efficiency of the production lines, and especially Toyota, which came now in the area of electric cars. Definitely, the environment industry is feasible, financially feasible. It's an industry that has several types of benefits, but also several approaches that makes you reach that benefit. But the question we have asked ourselves, what is needed after the feasibility study? When we table a project that is financially and economically feasible to financing institutions, they prefer other types of projects. They don't prefer going straight to environmental projects. And we said, okay, what is needed after having a feasibility study for an environmental project? This question went around. But we said probably we focus on the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And to our surprise, so many answers came. We asked for one word only. So we just select a commercial bank, and then we ask, after the feasibility study for an environment project, what do you need? Just one. Well, in India, the answer came, passion. You need a passion after the feasibility study. So that passion has to come from somewhere. Well, looking into this project, we said, well, okay, the passion we have Terry here. With us, he has enough passion for everyone, representing everyone. In China, they said, you need partnership. That partnership, I think also my colleague here, Dr. Hashim, is taking all UN agencies and other institutions, private sector institutions along. In Russia, they said, you need a comrade. A comrade. So, which means someone who is supposed to be with you, not only politically, but also ideologically. A feasibility study by itself is not enough. In Brazil, they said you need a leader. Okay, we said we have leaders. In South Africa, they said you need a good neighbor to push you on. But I think eventually that list can go on for a long a list of words. I don't have enough time. What I think we should do is to form a working group that should have a mandate to fast track the financing of environmental projects and financing of projects related to green cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And you've already heard from the next Dr. Mohammed bin Dana, who is also well educated in chemistry and in the UK. If you could please give us a little bit more of your perspective from where you sit at the Supreme Council on Environment, and of course it touches every aspect of environment here in the neighborhood, as you just said, Dr. Mohammed, and you know what that means for the broader GCC and other communities.
I think there is a lot of opportunities here in Bahrain, especially regarding the energy efficiency and the renewable energy projects. I noticed that today we're much more concentrated on the waste management. I'll speak a bit about what we have done since 2002 with the medical waste recycling, which is quite a very long time ago that we handled this issue. So, and also regarding the used oil, I think we do have a very efficient used oil experience here in Bahrain, and it shows exactly that this kind of business is very successful. Now you can't even find a drop of used oil in Bahrain, and there is a lot of high demand on this for the private sectors. We have like 5 big industries dealing with the recycling of used oil, and this shows how much this business is very successful. It has a value of 1 gallon, I think, for one barrel for about 15 to 26 BD. They're buying it out of the shops, the garages. The municipal waste is an issue that it has to be tackled, as Terry mentioned, and I think how to deal with this project is very crystal clear, and the municipality is moving forward toward that. we can't use the landfill anymore. Everybody in the world is using waste to energy. And this is, I think, the way that the municipality will do. For us as Supreme Council for Environment, we are trying to set up policies and regulations towards all industries and study the environmental impact assessment on those. And this is what we can offer to the industries. So we also kind of guide them into how they can deal with their waste and give them the best solution so they can handle it. Regarding the energy efficiency, you know that Bahrain has participated on the COP21 for the climate change, and one of the most important outcome of that was the Green Global Fund. And the Green Global Fund, I think it's going to be an opportunity for Bahrain to submit some of the industry's projects, like, for example, what GPIC has done on CO2 re-injection inside their process. This is typical kind of projects that, if we wanted to do it in the future, can be submitted to the climate fund for financing. Although, as you know, and maybe Sheikh Mohammed here also know that financing also required the environmental approval for the industries. Now, you can't have industries unless it has an environmental impact assessment, shows exactly how are you proceeding and what is the process and if it is environmental friendly or not. And this will help you to get the financing that you need from the private sectors. We are trying to get from the Green Climate Fund also not only on the mitigations on how to reduce emissions on CO2, we're trying to get on some of the projects of adaptations, like transplanting of mangroves or increased the reclamation size to tackle the sea level rise. So all these issues has been looked by the Supreme Council for Environment. But I wish to get out of this conference as to encourage the private sectors to have the financing of their environmental friendly projects, and what is the mechanism to do that. And if we can offer help with the Green Climate Fund, we are really ready to support you. We have a very strong relationship with them, and we are trying to get them to have a branch in Bahrain, and this is one of our main objectives, is to be close to this fund, to have an office here, so we can build up more and more relationship and increase the efficiency of the financing for the projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your last words were finance, and so we'll move to the next panelist who will speak on behalf of the finance industry in the United States. There's a saying, follow the money, but as we all know, good money follows good ideas. So would you like to take the podium, or would you like to sit there? Mr. Osama Al-Kharja is with Kuwait Finance House, and he'll be followed by Umber Buemi from UBS's regional office and the honorary Swiss consul.
Kuwait Finance House has started in 2002 operations in Bahrain, and from the beginning one of our main items of our development and financing agenda was environment protection. The bank since the beginning started in looking at opportunities to enhance environment. We have, for example, signed an agreement with the UNIDO to establish a clean technology fund with Dr. Hashim. We have, and there were a couple of opportunities came out of this fund. The bank is the largest developer, as many of you know, in Bahrain, developer of master plans, man-made islands, and like Diyar Muharraq and Rat al-Bahrain and other projects, where we invested hundreds of millions of dollars only to enhance the environment, whether enhancing the marine life, the artificial reefs, building materials, efficiency, the lighting systems, not just to comply to the environment regulation of Bahrain, but to exceed and lead and take more initiatives in this respect. For example, we have developed housing schemes, and we developed prototype house that exceeds the Ministry of Housing regulations for environment, with much more efficiency and in terms of cost saving for cooling systems, lighting, and other environment factors. And we offer them, of course, to the public. We developed thousands of houses, and we are developing tens of thousands through social housings, affordable housings, luxury housings, building facilities, hotel and shopping malls. So the environment in all aspects, in all of our projects. Add to that financing projects. We are very keen to finance projects, and I was just speaking to my colleague Terry about the model that he proposed for Bahrain. I met Terry several times earlier in Bahrain, and we are very keen to lead on behalf of the private sector financing. I don't see really obstacles in getting access to finance, as long as we have feasible project. And feasibility doesn't mean it's bad environment project. To the contrary, the more project feasible, the better environment outcome out of the project. So we are very keen to finance or to invest in projects through PPPs or through private sector initiatives. This is just a brief about our experience, and I will be very keen for further discussion later on.
Thank you for that overview. We have a few questions that will allow you to dig deeper. Umber, I know this is a personal passion for you as well.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Listen, I appreciate all the talks that we had this morning, but I believe that I live in a different world. It's 11:59, ladies and gentlemen. It's midnight. And usually at midnight, we go and sleep, but this time we have just to wake up, because nothing is being done, or not enough is being done for this planet. And when I took over the responsibility of the consulate, I started just to visit a few of the places here in Bahrain where I believed we had a few issues. And I will just mention one issue, because there are many different issues, but I think that we have to do something as soon as possible. When we say, the financial needs are not there. Financial needs are there. We have everything available. We have the technology, we have the finance, we have everything. But there is one thing that is missing, it's the political will. And we need that will, because if we are not having this will, we will go and turn around in circle. Let me give you one simple example. A few years ago, I met the number 2 at the traffic department, Sheikh Abdulrahman bin Abdul Wahab. And when I was discussing with him, I said, Sheikh, could you explain me why, when I look at the roads and I look at the trucks, between Hid, Mina Salman, and the Causeway, I see the trucks that have still names of companies in France, in Italy, in Spain, in Poland, in Czechia. Why are these trucks here? And he was a bit puzzled. And I said, I'll tell you why these trucks are here. They are here because they are not allowed in Europe anymore. They sell them here as second-hand. You register these trucks, and then we have all the pollution, we have all the risk, and everything else. This is a political will. If next week we decide now, these trucks are not registered anymore, we don't want them on the roads anymore, we solve the issue of the pollution, we solve the issue of the traffic, and we solve the issue of the several accidents that we have on the roads here. This is a political will, and we can make it happen in one day. It's not that we need a new law, a new this, a new that. You make it happen, it's done. And then, of course, we have other issues like the Tubli Bay. We are working with His Excellency Mr. Mohammed bin Dana on this. In my opinion, this is an atomic bomb for the people of this country, where you look at the chemicals that are involved in the Tubli Bay. We must do something as soon as possible. When you discuss with the people, with the doctors in the hospitals here, and they tell you that every single week they have new cases of children affected in their health with leukemia, with cancer, with tumors, it's a wake-up sign. We must do something. And we cannot continue discussing and discussing and discussing about this, about finance, about... This is, excuse me, this is a nonsense. We must go and look into these issues. I was over the weekend, Saturday, I went to Sitra and I took a boat just to go a little bit out and look at the dolphins, because we have the chance of having a few of the dolphins, who came here. And when you look at HID, the industrial area, the smoke that comes out of a few of these factories over there, that pollutes on a daily basis, on 24 hours basis, the whole island. How can we let this continue and continue? We must go and discuss with these companies, ask them, now you comply with international rules and regulations. We don't want you that you close. No, we don't. We want you that you continue, you produce what is necessary, but you produce in a different way. If you need to change a filter every 6 months, you change it. Not after 2 years or 3 years or 5 years.
You raise a good point, which has been asked on a few questions in the card, so I'll go ahead and ask it now as we pass it to one of our good corporate citizens, GPIC, and Dr. Jawahri, which is when you have, as we have collected in this room, and I won't call on any by name because I'm afraid I'll leave out some companies, particularly American companies, who pride themselves on their reputation index and good corporate citizenship. Unless there's a level playing field, and I used to officiate basketball and football, unless there's the government also plays a role as a referee to make sure that those who put up the resources and initiate programs on their own are not punished because against their competitors who are not as good, that creates basically an unlevel playing field. So would you like to take the microphone or step up?
No,
Dr. Jawahri, on behalf of GPIC.
Thank you. Well, I wear a number of hats, and to be honest, as an industrialist, to be sitting amongst environmentalists normally will feel very uncomfortable. But I've never sat in a sitting that I've felt so comfortable as I'm sitting here today. I think everything that my colleagues have mentioned cannot be done without the true engagement and partnership of the private sector, which I represent. And I also represent the oil and gas sector and fertilizer industry. As Terry mentioned, Bahrain is very small, but always punches stronger and harder than its size. And today Bahrain sits as the chairmanship of the international fertilizer industry, as the chairman of the Arab fertilizer industry, as the chairman of the Sustainable Development Committee. So for the first time in the history, Bahrain has a major role to play. And I believe that when we talk about green economy and when we talk about sustainable development, I think Bahrain has played a role model in sustainable development. I come from a petrochemical industry that today we are key partners, I will say, and maybe the only partners with UNEP, that the boss is sitting here, His Excellency Iyad is sitting here. And again, normally an industrialist in petrochemical field, oil and gas, would not have the relationship that we have with UNEP. Every single program that UNEP launches in this region is through GPIC and through the oil and gas. Also, we are, Dr. Mendana talked about CO2 recovery system, and we pride ourselves that in Bahrain we had the first CO2 recovery system in the entire Middle East, recovering 450 tons of CO2 per day and converting it into additional fertilizer production. People who have visited GPIC know what I'm talking about, and yesterday was one of the leading industrialists from Kuwait. But I think the best statement that describes the industry in Bahrain, it was when Queen Margaret of Denmark, the first monarch to visit any petrochemical industry in the world, actually, was done in Bahrain. And when she visited GPIC, she was very upset with her Minister of Protocols, because they told her that you will be inaugurating a garden in a petrochemical complex. And she said, but they were wrong, because really I'm inaugurating a petrochemical complex in a garden. And that's how she described GPIC. So I think the private sector and the industry has played major role, and really I do not see it as negative as you see it. But I need to address the Tubli Bay, because I was in the Shura Council as a legislator for 12 years. And I pride myself that if you say, what did you achieve in this 12 years? I was the member of parliament that was pushing to make Tubli Bay actually a reservoir under UN protocol group B, which means that even the government of Bahrain or any authority in Bahrain is not allowed to anymore touch Tubli Bay with its development. So Tubli Bay has been categorized under UN as exactly. So that from environmental point of view, the political will in Bahrain is there, and a lot of investments are going also there. But as Terry said, it takes time. For example, the sewage treatment unit that used to dispose now been converted from a by-treatment unit to a tertiary unit, and maybe into now four-stage unit, which means that the water from the sewage treatment can be even used for drinking purposes, like in Europe. So a lot of investment is going there, but it takes time. It took California 15 years to do that. It will take Bahrain a while. From the oil and gas industry, where I come from, we are investing millions of dollars in order to produce more, better quality product, but using less energy. And that is the key really to sustainable development when we talk about green economies and sustainable development, is how to provide our social contribution to provide the people of this planet with sufficient food. As Terry was talking about, people just eat, but there are 7 billion people on this planet. And in 2050, there will be 9 billion people on this planet. Who's going to feed them if there was no fertilizer industry, for example, which is also gas-based industry? 75% of the world food production is produced as a result of the fertilizer industry. Now, what have we done in the fertilizer industry? And I'm the chairman of the International Fertilizer Industry. We have ensured that the efficient use of fertilizers and the environmental impact of the fertilizers are reduced by tenfold. Today, in 1 acre of land, we can produce 4 times the produce utilizing 1/4 of the fertilizer that was used 15 years ago. If we take the gas turbines, for example, the power generation that we talked about, 20 years ago, the power generation efficiency was only 15% to, at best, was 20% in energy use of the gas. Today, there are gas turbines, and Bahrain is proud to say that it's converting all its gas turbines to high-level combined cycle energy efficient gas turbines, where we can get 65 to 70% efficiency use of the gas that we utilize. So the will is there, the policies are there. They are, I say, people have to abide by the law. People have to, the laws are there in Bahrain. Actually, Bahrain has one of the best laws, I think.
Well, and I think it's useful at this point for us to also start looking about how do you make decisions, what's the next goal? Because as I stated before, you know, there are already some important metrics. There are international standards. There are internal goals. You have a couple of questions on cards about what's the next 5-year plan, et cetera. Let me invite Craig, who's also representing AECOM, and a good corporate citizen, and whether you'd like to come up here and do it. And then we have a question from Dr. Nasser, and then we'll move into the Q&A. I have a few cards up here. If anyone wants to pass them up, I'll try to take them from here, but I'm also going to go out into the audience with the microphone if you'd rather just ask the question from there. Craig?
Thank you very much. I think from an engineering point of view in construction, you know, we've changed. In the 1800s as engineers, you know, our charter was to utilize the great resources of nature to the benefit of mankind. And about 20, 30 years ago, we realized, well, hold on, that's a limited resource, and that's where sustainability came in. And we had to think about this, and the charter changed, and it wasn't just utilize the resources, it was for the future generations. So we've already touched on it. Why do we need to have this discussion in terms of more power station, more electricity, the sewage treatment plants? Obviously, 7 billion people and increasing on a daily basis. So we're always going to have this conflict between, you know, human demands, the socioeconomics. What do people want? They're the ones that camp out at the government offices saying, we want this, we want more fishing license. You don't see the fish and the dugongs going, say, oh, hold on, we're being exploited here. So it is this conflict that we have to deal with, and I think we've got the tools. And I think as a closing statement from me before these panelists get on there, I think we've seen a great willingness of not just corporate social responsibility, but also from investors. We've seen a Supreme Council of Environment that's willing to listen and to engage with people. We've seen industry and we've seen diplomats, everybody saying, now's the time, we have to do this. Sure. And I think the whole focus of this is, my message is sustainability is good for business and it's good for people. And I think that if we come together and we develop a platform that includes all the stakeholders, from the investors to the government legislators to the construction people, then I think we're on a winner. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you. Bob?
We have some selected respondents from the audience first. Dr. Nasser had a question. If you just stand there, I think, and maybe face the cameras behind you if you'd like to make sure they can see your face as well. And then we have a question right next to him. You'll pass the microphone when you're done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Nizar al-Baharna. I don't have a question. I have just a comment on Terry's nice presentation. I spent the last 5 years working on sustainable development in 3 directions. I was teaching, writing, working with World Bank, working with think tanks. I've been working in NGOs, working mainly in sustainable development. And most importantly, of course, I was doing some projects from United States to Europe, to Africa, to Asia. My comment is that we're talking about two things. We're talking about sustainable development and we're talking about sustainable communities. Now, the problem, I can see it from my humble work, is that we cannot fragment sustainable development. We cannot just focus on environment, forgetting the cultural side, the economical side, the social side, and as well as the governance. So it has to be totally integrated. The second thing is to involve communities. For example, we have a waste project in Romania. We're doing a waste project in Romania. But the way we are doing it, although it is an environmental project, but we are involving the communities as part of the project. So the communities are the one who's paying the tipping fee. The United Nations, the European Union is paying what they call the green certificate, which is extra fees. We're taking that, and then we're creating a company for the community in which we have a local operator who's doing the waste management, and then bringing technology basically to convert that, the gasification of that municipal waste to produce thermal power, and also to create, beside that, to create other parts to link this environmental project with other sustainable development. That means we're creating schools, we're going to create health centers within the community, as well as create an entrepreneurship center to create jobs and getting the people there, as well as a cultural center. That will integrate the community. That's how people should look at sustainable development. Environment, people will not just invest in environment. They will invest in environment if they think that there is other sort of benefits that comes to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'll pass the microphone to your left, Ahmed Al-Haddad, a member of the Shura Council, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, Dr. Jawahri touched on Toblite. And as member of Shura Council for 12 years, he defended Toblite. But lately, we hear that in the news, a lot of pollution, a lot of sewage, wastage of sewage is going into that. I wonder, sir, whether you are aware of this, and has been mentioned in the newspaper. If you could just elaborate a little bit on this. My second question is, everybody, the panelists, Terry also mentioned that littering, and he mentioned Californians on the road, some people who are driving through things. My question is, how important is educating the public to avoid such kind of things? Because educating the public can be useful in preventing, environmental difficulties, problems for the public. I think it's very important to educate the public through Bahrain TV, through media, through universities. We at the Shura Council doing our most best to have legislation that can help this kind of things. Moreover, the Gulf as a whole has a lot of sun, Why can't we use it as renewable energy? This is very important. I think Emirates, they have very pioneering projects in this. Why Bahrain should not also follow suit? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I should add that a member of this audience once shared with me that the ability to activate through the pulpit, through our religious leaders in Bahrain of various faiths, but that the uptake of public education campaigns is always enhanced when people go to hear a religious leader speak on the same topic about water conservation, waste, and all those sorts of things. So there's a cultural element here prevalent in the Gulf that isn't always as strong in other parts of the world. We have a representative of academia, Professor. I'm glad we actually have someone from a university to speak. Would you please identify yourself and ask your question? I know it's future-oriented, so we're going to try and move this panel from the past to the future.
Of course. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Amin Al-Miligi, Head of Research at IMA International University. And thank you for the Supreme Council for Environment in Bahrain and UNIDO for such interesting gathering. Just Dr. Jawahri, I have visited the JBIC last week. is really, really, as he mentioned, it's amazing. I'm professor in chemistry, and I know how much chemistry they are producing 3 products. They produce ammonia, and they produce methanol, and they produce nutrients, fertilizers. You know, if I have this bottle and fill it with ammonia and just open it around here, everybody around will smell ammonia. I didn't imagine this in the company. Thank you very much, it's great. Also about hydrogen. Hydrogen internationally now, as Bert mentioned, the political will. In the modern country, the political will already done. In United States, they have around 77 fueling stations, because this is one of my research. They have around 77 or more fueling stations for hydrogen energy. California State, where he was working with Arnold Schwarzenegger, since 2007, they are working and they have the highest fueling station in the United States. Hydrogen energy is the future in my view, as a scientist and as a researcher, because oil as estimated, it will be last up to 2053 or more. Yani from now, around 40 years and no more oil in the world, as estimated by scientists. Natural gas, of course, will last, but also all these pollute the environment. For the CO2, we reached the level, the maximum level now. It's, as estimated, is 400 ppm in the level. We reached it, we passed it in the world. So my question is, what about the future for hydrogen energy for the country, the poor country? In the country like US, Europe, Japan, they have a big step now in the hydrogen energy. The car maker in the world, BMW, Toyota, all these cars now, they are producing cars running with hydrogen energy. So I think the productive way to ask that question
is what will it take
my question is, where are the developing country to support the other nations for such great things? You are developed and you leave the other country with oil and with pollution, with everything. We need to control. And here in Bahrain, it's very important to have this step in the hydrogen energy. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best.
Then let me ask the financiers, because what I notice in this part of the world, very often we look to government to lead, when in fact in other parts of the world there's private investment that's not government directed going in to make things a reality. So let me ask our 2 representatives of finance up here, what will it take for you to evaluate hydrogen? Give us your checklist when you're going through things, so that we understand why or why not a certain sector might be invested in. And then to what degree does it require government sponsorship, not just permission and permits and regulatory things which are understood, but actually for the government to be a partner in order for something to become a reality in a partnership sort of way. And then I have a few other questions here, but I'm going to come down to the audience, presuming we have some folks who do want the microphone. And so while you're thinking on that, I'm going to let everyone at the end of the day do their wrap-up question, but I'm going to ask it now so you're starting to think about it, because we have about 10 minutes left before, to keep our commitment, we will break. One I love for AmCham, which is how can American companies within Bahrain, how can they work with Bahrain to reduce solid waste and improve air quality? And I would basically say that's the question on the minds of all the AmCham business community, is what is their role, how can they participate? And then we've had several questions about what is the 5-year plan or the 10-year plan, or how do you develop metrics and decisions around these sorts of things. So I'm going to ask everyone to give their last notes on that. But the immediate question has to do with, I think what the professor asked is, okay, hydrogen. That's one example. How, from the finance side, are you making decisions as to what to back? And when it comes to just R&D and innovation generally, where does the smart money go at this moment?
Thank you. As a bank, any bank wants to ensure that the money will be returned back. Lended money will be, so the client or the customer will be able to return back the money. And if it's an equity, we want to ensure that there is a return, a feasible return. Of course, considering the risk and the return together. Usually, banks will ask for basic elements, which includes the technical studies, market study, and the financial study, in addition to the licenses. Of course, the business model or the financial model of the project is another item on the list that any bank, including KFH, would want to assess to enable the bank to come up with an overall evaluation and assessment for the credit proposal or an investment proposal. This is very simple, and that's why I'm saying it again. I don't see access to finance as an obstacle to develop environment in Bahrain. Thank you.
I think in the hydrogen, the technology is well developed now, and it is a matter of time for it to come. And I know the industry now working with the UN Global Compact, which is the partnership between United Nations and the private sector, because about 15 years ago, the United Nations realized that they cannot implement their policies if they do not engage and have the support of the private sector. So, and I'm very pleased to say that actually representing the private sector and the industry, I had the pleasure of meeting His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon 3 times now, and I'm going there in June as well to discuss how we can
Tell him at that meeting.
Well, in that meeting, we are planning to tell them that really the industrial, the private sector are investing billions of dollars in research, development, in ensuring that we can bring new technologies in achieving the 17 SDGs.
But he'll hear that from everyone. When the meeting's over and you have 30 seconds in the elevator to tell him 1 or 2 things about what's going on in Bahrain, what do you say to Ban Ki-moon?
Well, what we are saying is that they are on the right road in engaging the private sector in implementing their SDGs and in achieving their goals. That is the only way to go if we want to have a sustainable development, as Dr. Nizar has said, that really ensures for the well-being of the people, because at the end of the day, it is the people that we're talking about, as well as look after our environment, but also the industry needs to economically be viable in order to survive. Otherwise, we will not be surviving. And working with them, working with agencies like UNIDO, working with agencies like UNEP, working with agencies like Global Compact, and I can assure you a lot of industries around the world have shifted their policies in order to meet the public concerns with regard to environment, with regard to utilization of energies, and keep our industry sustairable.
But
so
Terry, talk about this is not a zero-sum proposition. What you told us at the outset was it's not such an either-or anymore. There are ways to create jobs, to promote health that are not only economically viable, but are profitable and job-creating, not job-losing. Do you have anything to add?
Well, absolutely, and maybe we can even just use hydrogen as an example. Yes, the investment is there if the risks are appropriate, but sometimes it takes a little jump starting from government. So, for example, in California, we've done some jump starting with the first few stations, as has been mentioned, so that the car companies could bring the cars. But we're now looking at doing something like revenue bonds, where a bond would be floated to finance the stations more quickly. Obviously, there's not enough vehicles yet to use all those stations, but then when the stations are there, the vehicles will come, and then there's a tax on the fuel, which pays back the revenue bonds over time. So here's a way, in a very cost-effective, competitive manner, that the government could step in and incentivize a whole new localized industry.
Like that. I'd like everyone to have a chance to wrap up, please. But again, focus on what we need to do from an educational standpoint, what we need to do to incentivize both market and regulatory, all the different players that are represented here, and ultimately, how do we unlock the finance now that, as Terry has pointed out, a lot of the technologies are proven and being innovated all the time, but persuading people that the risk versus reward is where it needs to be to actually become investment. So let's start with GPIC and we'll work our way down to our host UNIDO.
I think, as I said, a lot of steps are being taken from the private sector point of view. Education and culture, way of life is really the key to sustainable development. It is really convincing people that turning the light after you leave the room, that use less water when you wash your hand and shower, when turn off your air conditioning when you are leaving your home, and so on. So all these individual less rubbish to be thrown, and the California example is a key success to show how really public education and change in way of life can change our world into a better world. But from the private sector point of view, from the oil and gas sector point of view, from the fertilizer industry point of view, I can assure you that we are using every single technology that is available in order to produce more and utilize less energy and less emissions.
Thank you. Hubert?
Everyone, I mean, we have the technologies, we have great know-how, I believe.
So you're answering the question of what American companies can do by saying, buy Swiss.
We have started into the field of the car industry, let's say sometime in 1985, when Switzerland decided to introduce this, the catalytic exhaust. Everyone was a little bit laughing around us. They said, oh, these Swiss, they would like to revolutionize the world, etc. I think we made an effort into that direction, and we will definitely, continue. So we are willing to work closer with, the government here, help everyone. His Excellency, Mr. Bidena, is one of them. So definitely I would like to reassure the people that, we have the capabilities and we would like to exchange even more in the future. If it is with GPIC, I would be more than happy as well.
Sure.
Well, and I'll add, in my State Department role, when our design engineering team came to me and said, we're going to launch our first photovoltaic array on a U.S. mission to the UN, in Geneva, I said, aren't there a lot more sunny places in the world? But they said, the regulatory environment, the cost per kilowatt hour, the metrics were there economically. That's where the U.S. government put its first photovoltaic array, not here, not in sunny sub-Sahara.
Sure.
Mr. Osama.
Well, I think it's imperative to develop the existing ecosystem for environment in Bahrain, and locally, and of course in collaboration with our friends around the world. We have so there are lots of prospects to improve the environment in Bahrain, prospect as well as opportunities. Business opportunities through proper education, awareness, cooperation, and of course involvement, continuing involvement and increasing involvement of the private sector with, of course, in collaboration with the private sector.
And is there interest in a green fund, a green bond, or as a category of investment, or is it just simply among the criteria when you make other investments?
I think I'm not sure if we have in Bahrain a national environment strategy or a plan for Bahrain. And the strategy should include goals and objectives and quick wins. Where we want, what we want to achieve and when we want to achieve them, and then those objectives can be transformed into projects and plans and projects. And
so really, each project gets evaluated on its own merits.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Terry, would you like to go next or last? I'll leave it to you.
I'm just taking it in order.
Okay.
Look, I just want to say again, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting. Thank you so much to UNIDO and to all of our sponsors for putting this on. It's been, again, I always learn more than I think I give. My last comments, I think, would pick up on what several people have said about education. You know, all of us of our generation have created many of these problems, our parents, but we did it unwittingly. Nobody wants dirty air or dirty water or waste going into our landfills. These were all things that we did thoughtfully at the time, but now we can do it better. But a lot of that comes by educating the next generation. My wife worked on a law in California that requires K through 12, every grade, to have environmental education. But it also then teaches what are the solutions. It's not just about a cost, but it's about all the benefits that we gain from that. And I also think that that then leads to everybody understanding that it's not just up to government or finance or policymakers or technology, but it's up to each one of us. So what is it that each of us will do today as we walk out of here? What commitment will each of us make? And it doesn't have to be huge. It can be something very small. For example, in the United States in the last 10 years, the average American has gained 10 pounds of weight, myself included. And so if we committed to get rid of that weight, it turns out that the airlines in the United States burn 350 million more gallons of jet fuel every year because of carrying around all this extra weight. So if we
Careful,
lose...
Qatar Airways is going to start charging us by the pound, not for our luggage, but for us.
So if we lose the weight, we would feel better, and so would the planet. So a simple thing like that, I commit that when I come back here a year from now, I'll be at least 10 pounds lighter. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Dr. Medina, I know you've been thrown the challenge by a number of people, and it's always difficult when you're in a government position to speak prospectively about regulations that have not worked their way through the process, but I think we'd all appreciate your perspective on where you think things are going.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you all for having me here. I would like to thank UNIDO and the American Chamber of Commerce for organizing this, since we're concluding. But I think this is a great ending for the environmental month that we have done. It was a 34 events over a month. I'm totally exhausted, and my team is totally exhausted. Hopefully we achieve the goal that we educate the people of Bahrain on the importance of taking care of the environment. I mean, among all the events we have done, and the Mashtan cleaning, the island of Mashtan cleaning had the biggest impact, even from the government itself, because we went there and we've done the cleaning with the people, and it was voluntarily people who've done the cleaning on it. So the message we wanted to send is it's our duty to set up the rules and regulations, but it's also it will not be done if it is not with the help of people and educating people of the importance of taking care of the environment and what is the best practice. I know we had some issues, including Tubli, which I think the solution is on the pipeline. It's the new sewage treatment plan is tendering. It's tendering now, and it's going to be a $250 million project. So it is an issue, and the government realized that and doing something about it. The rules of the regulations of the air quality, especially in HED, is done. You know, one of the HED industries, because of the push that we have done on them, they spent $15 million on improving their air quality. But on the same time, there is shortcoming out of us. We need to update our rules and regulations. We're working now with the House of Parliament on having a new legislations and laws. We do have an environmental strategy, but what we need to do is we need to set up an energy strategy to have an efficiency programs done all over the country with encouragement of renewable energy projects. I think concentrating on the energy efficiency is very critical and important now, especially after removing the subsidies.
Good, I'm glad you said it, because we had several questions on the cards, but I wanted to leave that to you to mention.
Okay, so you have more questions?
No, I'm saying I didn't ask them because I wanted you to address
No,
it.
I believe that it will hit everybody's pocket now. So we need to think of a solution, which is, I think, the only solution is energy efficiency. It is not that we haven't done anything. The municipality have done the isolation system. Mr. Bayoumi, regarding the cars, the government issued a rule that you can't import a car, used car, more than 5 years old. So this has done. The air conditioning specifications has been done, which is a rules that there is certain specifications for air conditioning. The lighting specifications has been done, but I agree, it's only initiatives has been done. We're trying to wrap it up, and having it under one strategy goes to certain entities to apply it, and then we can have a KPI to measure how much efficient that we are working on our strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm reminded by the saying that you see on posters that human resource is the only resource that doesn't deplete the more you use it and the more you engage it. And so there's a lot of creativity in this room. I'm hoping that in his final remarks also, Dr. Mohammed Isa will, since he travels to so many countries in his responsibles with the United Nations, can tell us who he thinks is getting it right and who we can also help model after in terms of unlocking that cooperation and creativity between the different sectors.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you, everybody. I think that the main mandate of UNIDO in industry is to build the human resources capacities. And that goes across all the industry sector. And one of the policy issues that we have rectified recently through the SDGs was that during the MDGs, industry was never mentioned. So we were sort of sidelined. And when we address industrial problems from environment point of view, that reference to MDGs was not a direct reference. But we worked on that, and we worked thirdly, as Muhammad said. I am also third. We have now goal number 9. Goal number 9 in the SDGs says build resilient infrastructure, promote industrialization, sustainable and inclusive industrialization, and foster innovation. That goal number 9, the industry finds itself there. And just to take this opportunity and inform you that UNIDO has produced this document is about how the industry could achieve the related SDGs. And I also take this opportunity and give it to Muhammad so that you know the information has already passed there. And since we are talking about human resources development, that is the role of UNIDO. Thank you very much.